Before the grand narratives of empires and nations, before the clash of armies and the rise of civilizations, there was a garden, and then a field. In that field, the seeds of human discord were sown, not in thunderous pronouncements, but in the subtle nuances of two offerings, two hearts, two destinies. This is the story of Cain and Abel, a story that echoes through the ages, a primal drama that reveals the deepest truths about human nature, about our relationship with God and with one another. We stand at the dawn of human history, where the echoes of paradise still resonate, yet the shadow of the fall looms large. The earth, once a source of effortless abundance, now yields its bounty only through arduous labor. Cain, the tiller of the soil, wrestles with the earth, his hands calloused and worn, his brow furrowed with the weight of his toil. His offering, born of this struggle, is a testament to human striving, a symbol of our relentless effort to master the world around us. Abel, the keeper of flocks, moves with a different rhythm, a gentler touch. His offering, the firstborn of his flock, is a gift of surrender, a recognition of divine providence. It is an acknowledgement that all we have is ultimately a gift, a grace bestowed upon us by the Creator. In the contrast between these two offerings, we see the seeds of envy, not a sudden outburst of hatred, but a slow, insidious erosion of trust. The question that hangs in the air is not merely why did God favor Abel, but why do I feel diminished by his blessing? The Hebrew word abad, meaning to toil, speaks to the burden of self-reliance, the weight of human effort divorced from divine grace. Cain's labor is a reflection of the curse, a constant struggle against the recalcitrant earth. In contrast, minha, meaning gift, speaks to the spirit of surrender, the recognition that all we have is a gift from God. This fundamental difference in perspective lies at the heart of the conflict between the brothers. The smoke rising from their altars is a visual metaphor for their inner states. Cain's smoke, dark and heavy, clings to the earth, a symbol of his earthly preoccupations, his self-centeredness. Abel's smoke, light and ethereal, ascends towards the heavens, a symbol of his openness to the divine, his willingness to surrender. In this subtle contrast, we see the seeds of envy taking root, a silent, insidious poison that will ultimately lead to tragedy. We are invited into a moment of extreme intimacy. God is watching and is about to interact with his children. This moment will change everything. The offering. A fractured communion, the dawn of discord, in the nascent light of humanity's daybreak, where the lingering whispers of Eden's perfection still echoed in the hearts of humankind. Two brothers, Cain and Abel, stood as archetypes of the human condition. They were born into a world marked by the shadow of the fall, a world where the earth yielded its bounty only through arduous labor, a world where the harmony between humanity and creation had been fractured. Yet, even in this brokenness, they sought to connect with the divine, to offer their tribute to the Creator. But in the subtle nuances of their offerings, a chasm began to form, a rift that would reverberate through the ages. This is not merely a tale of sibling rivalry, but a profound exploration of the human heart, its capacity for both love and envy, for both surrender and self-assertion. It is a story that illuminates the fundamental questions of our existence. What is our relationship with God? What is our relationship with one another? And what is the true meaning of sacrifice? The burden of labor, Cain, the tiller of the soil, embodied the human struggle against the recalcitrant earth. His labor, avad, was a testament to human striving, a relentless effort to wrest sustenance from a world that had become hostile. His offering, born of this struggle, carried the weight of self-reliance, a silent assertion of autonomy. It was as if he sought to earn God's favor through the sheer force of his own efforts, to prove his worth through the sweat of his brow. Yet in this very striving there was a subtle form of rebellion, a refusal to acknowledge the primacy of grace. Cain's offering was not inherently bad. God receives all offerings. But Cain's heart was in the wrong place. His offering was a symbol of his need to control and his belief that he was the sole provider. This is a very modern problem. We are a people that try to control everything. We try to control the weather, the economy, and even our own body. We believe that we are the masters of our own destiny and that we do not need God. Cain's offering is a symbol of this very thing. The gift of surrender. Abel, the keeper of flocks, moved with a different rhythm, a gentler touch. His offering, minha, was a gift of surrender, a recognition of divine providence. It flowed from a heart filled with gratitude, a deep awareness that all he had was a gift from the Creator. The firstborn of his flock, the most precious of his possessions, was offered as a symbol of his complete trust in God's provision. It was an acknowledgement that he was not the source of his own blessings, but a steward of God's grace. Abel's offering was a symbol of his humility, his willingness to submit to the will of God. It was an act of worship, a recognition of God's sovereignty over all creation. Abel understood that true prosperity came not from human effort alone, but from a harmonious relationship with the divine. The insidious erosion of trust. Here, in the subtle nuances of these offerings, envy began, not with a thunderous declaration of hatred, but with the insidious erosion of trust, a whisper in the soul. It was a silent questioning of God's justice, a subtle resentment that festered in the shadows of Cain's heart. Why has God favored Abel's offering and not mine, he wondered. Am I not worthy of divine favor? Has God's love been withdrawn from me? This is the heart of envy, the belief that God's grace is a limited resource, that another's blessing diminishes our own. It is a lie that whispers there is not enough for both of us, a lie that breeds resentment, bitterness, and ultimately violence. It is a poison that seeps into the soul, corrupting our perception of reality, distorting our relationship with God and with one another. Envy is a very subtle sin. It does not always manifest itself in outward acts of violence. It often hides in the shadows of our hearts, festering and growing until it consumes us from within. It is a silent killer, a poison that slowly erodes our capacity for love and compassion. The meaning of sacrifice, we must ask. What is the true meaning of sacrifice? Is it merely a transaction, a bartering with the divine, an attempt to earn God's favor through our own efforts? Or is it an act of profound self-offering, a recognition that all we have is a gift, a grace bestowed upon us by the Creator? Abel understood this. His offering was a sign of covenantal fidelity, a recognition of God's sovereignty. Cain, however, approached God with a transactional mindset, as if he could earn divine favor through his own efforts. This is the root of envy, the belief that God's grace is a limited resource, that another's blessing diminishes our own. True sacrifice is not about giving God something he needs, but about giving him something that we value. It is about surrendering our will to his, about placing our trust in his provision. It is an act of love, a gesture of gratitude, a recognition that all we have comes from him. Sacrifice as politics. Abel's first fruits in Exodus chapter 23, verse 16, embody covenantal fidelity, a profound political act of acknowledging God as the ultimate sovereign. In the ancient Near East, the offering of first fruits was a symbolic recognition of the king's authority over the land. Abel's offering, therefore, was a declaration of God's kingship, a refusal to place his trust in his own efforts or in the power of the earth. In contrast, Cain's transactional worldview, rooted in self-sufficiency, becomes a form of idolatry, placing his own efforts above divine grace. This is the seed of tyranny, the belief that one's own power is absolute, that one is the master of one's own destiny. The act of offering first fruits was also a communal act, a way of acknowledging the interconnectedness of all creation. It was a recognition that the land was not merely a resource to be exploited, but a gift to be shared. Cain's refusal to participate in this communal act was a sign of his isolation, his self-centeredness, his unwillingness to acknowledge his dependence on God and on others. The smell of sanctity, ancient Jewish midrash, suggests Abel's offering ascended like prayer, a fragrant cloud reaching heaven, while Cain's clung to earth, heavy and burdened. This is not merely a matter of physical smoke. It is a metaphor for works detached from grace. When our actions are not rooted in love and humility, they become heavy, burdensome, and ultimately fruitless. They lack the ascending power of true worship. Cain's offering, though substantial in its own right, lacked the essential element of kavanah, intentionality and devotion. It was a performance, not a prayer. It was work, but not worship. The smell of the offering in ancient Near Eastern thought was not simply an olfactory experience, but a symbol of divine acceptance. Abel's offering was pleasing to God because it was a reflection of his inner disposition, his heart of surrender. Cain's offering, on the other hand, was rejected, not because of its inherent quality, but because it revealed a heart that was closed off to grace, a spirit that was unwilling to acknowledge its dependence on the divine. This concept transcends the literal act of sacrifice. It speaks to the quality of our actions in all areas of life. Are our works infused with love, humility, and a recognition of God's grace? Or are they driven by self-interest, pride, and a desire for control? The smell of our actions in this sense is the spiritual fragrance that emanates from our hearts, a fragrance that either pleases or displeases the divine, the primacy of grace. The story of Cain and Abel is a stark reminder that God's grace precedes and enables all human action. It is not our efforts that earn God's favor, but God's favor that empowers our efforts. Cain's envy stemmed from his failure to recognize this fundamental truth. He believed that he could earn God's blessing through his own hard work, that he could somehow obligate God to respond favorably to his offering. But grace is not something that can be earned. It is a free gift, a divine initiative that precedes and empowers all human endeavors. This is a core principle of Christian theology. Gratia praeveniens, previent grace. God's grace is not a reward for good behavior. It is the very source of our ability to do good. It is the divine spark that ignites our hearts, the divine power that enables us to love, to forgive, to create. Cain's tragedy was that he failed to recognize this fundamental truth, that he sought to build his relationship with God on the shifting sands of his own efforts, rather than on the solid rock of divine grace. The story is not about God arbitrarily choosing one brother over the other. It's about the posture of the heart. God sees the heart. Abel's heart was open to God's grace, and his offering reflected that. Cain's heart was closed, and his offering, though perhaps outwardly impressive, lacked the essential element of humility and surrender. This is a call to humility. It is a reminder that we are not self-sufficient, that we are dependent on God for everything. It is a call to surrender, to let go of our need to control, to trust in God's provision. It is a call to grace, to recognize that all we have is a gift, and to respond with gratitude and love. In the end, the fractured communion between Cain and Abel was not merely a result of their individual choices, but a reflection of the brokenness of the human condition itself. It was a manifestation of the libido dominandi, the desire to dominate, that had taken root in the human heart. It was a tragic foreshadowing of the violence and injustice that would plague humanity throughout the ages. But even in this tragedy, there is a glimmer of hope, a reminder that God's grace is always available, that redemption is always possible, if only we are willing to open our hearts to the divine. Envy's descent, from resonant to ruin. The algorithm of the fallen mind. Envy, that ancient serpent, is the first algorithm of the fallen mind, a self-perpetuating cycle of want and hate. It is a primal distortion, a corruption of the image of God within us. Why is his face lifted up? In Genesis chapter 4, verse 6, God asks Cain, a question that echoes through the ages, resonating in our clickbait outrage, our zero-sum politics, our insatiable desire for comparison, the Hebrew hamad, to covet, the same craving that felled Eden, now poisons fraternity, turning brother against brother, neighbor against neighbor. It is a wound that festers, a darkness that spreads, a contagion of the soul. An algorithm, in its most basic form, is a set of rules that a computer follows. Envy, in this context, is the set of rules that the fallen mind follows. It is the logic that drives our desire for more, our fear of less, our need to compare ourselves to others. It is a system of thought that leads to destruction. We see this algorithm at work in our daily lives. We see it in the way we compare ourselves to others on social media, in the way we compete for status and wealth, in the way we judge and condemn those who are different from us. Envy is a subtle force, but its effects are devastating. It erodes our capacity for joy, our ability to appreciate the gifts we have, our willingness to love and forgive. The subtle poison. Envy is a subtle poison, seeping into the cracks of our souls, eroding our capacity for love and compassion. It is the insidious whisper that tells us we are not enough, that another's success diminishes our own. It is the root of all violence, the fuel that ignites the flames of hatred and division. It is a silent killer, a toxin that slowly corrupts our humanity. This poison works by distorting our perception of reality. It makes us see the world through a lens of scarcity, where there is never enough, where another's gain is always our loss. It makes us focus on what we lack rather than what we have. It makes us resent those who have what we want rather than celebrate their success. Envy also works by isolating us from others. It makes us suspicious and distrustful, afraid to connect, unwilling to share. It creates a sense of separation, a feeling that we are alone in our struggles. This isolation makes us even more vulnerable to the poison of envy, creating a vicious cycle of resentment and despair. The field of discord. The brothers' fatal meeting place becomes every arena where difference sparks annihilation. Legislative chambers, comment sections, border walls. It is the space where the other is demonized, where dialogue descends into diatribe, where the sacred bond of humanity is broken. This field is not just a physical location, but a spiritual battleground, a place where the forces of love and hate collide. It is a place that can be anywhere, anytime. In our legislative chambers, we see the field of discord in the way politicians demonize their opponents, in the way they prioritize power over principle, in the way they create laws that divide and oppress. In our comment sections, we see the field of discord, in the way people unleash their darkest impulses, in the way they tear down others with impunity, in the way they spread misinformation and hate. Along our border walls, we see the field of discord in the way we dehumanize those who are seeking refuge, in the way we build barriers instead of bridges, in the way we choose fear over compassion. This field of discord is a reflection of the brokenness within us, a testament to our capacity for self-destruction. It is a place where we choose division over unity, hate over love, violence over peace. It is a place where we forget that we are all brothers and sisters, that we are all created in the image of God. Silence is complicity. Adam's absence in the narrative mirrors modern leadership voids. Fathers, pastors, and politicians failing to name envy's rot. Their silence is not neutrality, it is complicity, a tacit endorsement of the forces that tear us apart. The absence of just leadership allows the poison of envy to spread unchecked. When those in positions of authority fail to speak out against injustice, they become part of the problem. When they remain silent in the face of hatred, they give it permission to grow. This silence is not just a matter of words, it is a matter of action. It is a failure to challenge the systems that perpetuate inequality, a refusal to protect the vulnerable, a lack of courage to stand up for what is right. It is a betrayal of the trust that has been placed in them. The silence of Adam, the first father, foreshadows the silence of fathers throughout history who have failed to protect their children from harm. The silence of pastors who have failed to speak truth to power. The silence of politicians who have prioritized their own interests over the common good. This silence is a deafening roar, a testament to the moral vacuum that exists in our world. The digital Colosseum, modern social media platforms are the new fields of discord, where envy is fueled by algorithms and hate spreads like wildfire. The anonymity of the internet allows us to unleash our darkest impulses, to tear down others with impunity. This digital Colosseum is a reflection of the brokenness within us, a testament to our capacity for self-destruction. This digital world is a place where we are constantly bombarded with images of perfection, images that fuel our envy, images that make us feel inadequate. The algorithms that drive these platforms are designed to maximize engagement, to keep us scrolling, to keep us clicking. They do this by feeding us content that confirms our biases, content that triggers our envy. This creates an echo chamber, a place where we are only exposed to information that reinforces our existing beliefs, a place where we are never challenged to think differently. Cynatic intertitle, Am I my brother's keeper? The question that unmade the world and continues to unmake our own. This question is not just a historical relic, it is a question that we must answer every day. It is a question that challenges us to consider our responsibility to others, to recognize our interconnectedness, to choose compassion over indifference. The anonymity of the internet allows us to hide behind a mask, to say things that we would never say in person. This creates a culture of impunity, a place where we can tear down others without fear of consequence. This digital Colosseum is a place where we are constantly comparing ourselves. The mark is a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we are not beyond God's reach. It is a sign of God's enduring concern, a symbol of his relentless pursuit of the lost, but it is also a sign of human brokenness, a testament to our capacity for violence and injustice. The mark is a mirror, reflecting back to us the complexity of our own nature, the capacity for both good and evil that resides within us. The cry of the wanderer's cry, "My punishment is too great," resounds in every detention center and tent city, in every place where the marginalized are made invisible. The mark of Cain is not just a personal stain, it is a societal scar, a testament to our failure to protect the vulnerable. It is a cry that echoes through the ages, a lament for the brokenness of the world, a plea for justice and mercy. The mark of Cain, exile and the birth of injustice. The paradox of the mark, God's mark transforms Cain into history's first homo sacer, protected yet condemned, included by exclusion. It is a paradox, a symbol of divine mercy and human brokenness. Is this divine mercy or the birth certificate of systemic injustice? The mark is a complex sign, a symbol that holds within it both the judgment of God and the enduring love of God. It is a sign that speaks to the mystery of human freedom and the consequences of our choices. The homo sacri was a figure in ancient Roman law, a person who was both sacred and accursed, someone who could be killed without legal consequence, yet who was also forbidden to be sacrificed in ritual. Cain, in his exile, embodies this paradox. He is marked by God, set apart, yet also vulnerable, exposed to the dangers of the world. He is both protected and condemned, both included and excluded. This cry is not just a complaint, it is a profound theological statement. It is a recognition of the disproportionate nature of suffering, the way in which the consequences of sin often fall most heavily on the innocent. It is a challenge to our understanding of justice, a reminder that true justice must be tempered with mercy, the marginalized, the displaced, the forgotten. These are the modern-day Cains, bearing the marks of our societal sins. Their cries are a constant reminder of our failure to live up to the ideals of justice and compassion. Their suffering is a collective burden, a weight that we all must bear. God's enduring concern. The mark is also a sign of God's enduring concern. Even in his sin, Cain is not abandoned. God places a mark on him not to condemn him, but to protect him from further violence. This is a profound expression of divine mercy, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we are not beyond God's reach. God's mercy is not a sentiment, but an action. God marks Cain so that no one else will kill him. God's mercy is active. This act of divine protection speaks to the fundamental value of human life, even the life of a murderer. It is a reminder that every human being is created in the image of God, that every life has intrinsic worth. It is a challenge to our tendency to dehumanize those who have committed terrible acts, to write them off as irredeemable. God's mercy is not a license for sin, but a call to repentance. It is an invitation to turn away from violence and injustice, to embrace the path of reconciliation and healing. It is a reminder that even the most broken among us can find redemption, that even the darkest of hearts can be transformed by grace. Economies of envy. Contrast Cain's cursed soil with modern austerity politics that weaponize scarcity, creating artificial divisions and fostering resentment. The politics of scarcity is a breeding ground for envy, a system that thrives on the belief that there is not enough for everyone. When resources are scarce, people become desperate, turning against one another in a struggle for survival. This creates a vicious cycle of violence and oppression. Cain's cursed soil is a metaphor for the economic systems that perpetuate inequality, that concentrate wealth in the hands of a few while leaving the majority to struggle for basic necessities. These systems are not just unjust, they are also unsustainable. They create a climate of resentment and instability, a breeding ground for social unrest and violence. True economic justice requires a shift from a politics of scarcity to a politics of abundance, a recognition that there is enough for everyone if only we are willing to share. It requires a commitment to creating systems that promote equity and opportunity, that ensure that everyone has access to the basic necessities of life. It requires us to abandon the idea that the success of some must come at the expense of others. Abel's blood as meme. The voice from the ground, Genesis chapter 4, verse 10, becomes #activism, viral videos of police brutality, testaments ignored by power. Abel's blood cries out from every injustice, every act of violence, every instance where the marginalized are silenced. The digital age has amplified this cry, making it impossible to ignore. The digital age has given a voice to the voiceless. The digital cry is a powerful tool for social change, a way to hold those in power accountable, to expose injustice, to mobilize collective action. But it is also a fragile tool, vulnerable to manipulation and distortion. It is important to remember that the digital cry is not a substitute for real-world action, but a complement to it. The viral nature of digital media can create a sense of urgency, a feeling that we must act now. But it can also lead to a kind of moral fatigue, a sense of being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of injustice. It is important to remember that change takes time, that progress is often slow and incremental. We must be patient, persistent, and committed to the long haul. The blood of Abel, amplified by the digital age, is a call to conscience, a reminder that we are all responsible for the well-being of our brothers and sisters. It is a call to action, a challenge to build a world where justice and peace prevail. The politics of blood and memory, the silent cry. Abel never speaks a word in the biblical narrative, yet his blood cries out from the very ground, a primal scream that transcends time and space. This is not a cry for vengeance, but a desperate plea for tikkun, repair, a yearning for the restoration of justice and harmony. His silent witness indicts all who reduce the marginalized to mere talking points, to statistics in a political debate. In this Eucharistic paradox, the victim's absence becomes the conscience of the body politic, a constant reminder of our shared responsibility. The ground itself becomes a witness, holding the memory of injustice, refusing to let us forget. The blood of Abel spilled upon the earth is not merely a physical substance, it is a spiritual force, a living testament to the sanctity of human life. It is a cry that echoes through the ages, a lament for the brokenness of the world, a plea for justice and mercy. This cry is not a demand for retribution, but a yearning for reconciliation, a desire for the restoration of right relationships. The concept of tikkun, repair, is central to Jewish thought, a recognition that the world is broken and that we are called to participate in its healing. Abel's blood cries out for this repair, for the mending of the fractured bonds of humanity, for the restoration of justice and peace. It is a call to action, a challenge to confront the injustices of our time, to work towards a world where all are treated with dignity and respect. The absence of Abel's voice is a powerful indictment of those who silence the marginalized, who reduce them to mere statistics, who ignore their cries for help. In a world where power and privilege often drown out the voices of the vulnerable, Abel's silence becomes a deafening roar, a reminder of the enduring power of truth and justice. The Eucharistic paradox speaks to the way in which the victim's absence becomes a powerful presence, a constant reminder of our shared responsibility. Just as the Eucharist commemorates the sacrifice of Christ, Abel's blood commemorates the sacrifice of the innocent, challenging us to live lives of compassion and justice. The living memory of Abel is not simply a historical footnote. It is a living presence, a spiritual force that challenges us to confront the consequences of our actions. It is the voice of the voiceless, the cry of the oppressed, the silent scream of those who have been forgotten. In a world that often prioritizes power and expediency, Abel's memory reminds us of the enduring power of truth and justice. Memory is not merely a passive recollection of the past. It is an active force that shapes our present and our future. The memory of Abel challenges us to confront the dark chapters of human history, to acknowledge the injustices that have been committed, to learn from the mistakes of the past. It is a call to remembrance, a reminder that we must not forget the victims of violence and oppression. The voice of the voiceless is not just a metaphor. It is a reality. In every community, in every society, there are those who are marginalized, those who are silenced, those who are forgotten. The memory of Abel calls us to amplify their voices, to stand in solidarity with them, to work towards a world where their cries are heard and their needs are met. In a world that often prioritizes power and expediency, the memory of Abel reminds us that truth and justice are not mere abstractions. They are essential values that must guide our actions. It is a reminder that true power lies not in domination and control, but in compassion and service. Honoring Abel's memory, we must ask ourselves, how do we remember Abel? Do we honor his memory by seeking justice for the marginalized, by working to heal the wounds of division, by striving to create a world where all are treated with dignity and respect? Or do we allow his memory to fade, to be replaced by the empty promises of material prosperity and political power? Honoring Abel's memory is not a passive act of remembrance, it is an active commitment to justice and compassion. It requires us to challenge the systems that perpetuate inequality, to speak out against oppression, to extend a helping hand to those in need. It requires us to live lives of integrity, to embody the values that Abel's memory represents. The wounds of division are deep and pervasive, tearing apart families, communities, and nations. Healing these wounds requires more than just words. It requires concrete actions, a willingness to listen to one another, to forgive one another, to work together towards a common goal. It requires a commitment to building bridges of understanding and reconciliation. The empty promises of material prosperity and political power often distract us from the true meaning of life, from the pursuit of justice and compassion. The memory of Abel reminds us that true fulfillment lies not in the accumulation of wealth or the attainment of power, but in the service of others, in the pursuit of a world where all are treated with dignity and respect. Interfaith dialogue, Islam's Cain. The Quranic parallels, chapter 5, verses 27 through 32, frame Abel as a martyr for divine truth, a victim of unprovoked aggression. This perspective serves as a powerful rebuke to sectarian bloodshed, reminding us that violence against the innocent is a transgression against God Himself. In Islam, the value of one innocent life is the value of all of humanity. This is a powerful reminder that our actions have far-reaching consequences. The Quranic narrative emphasizes the sanctity of human life, the inviolability of the innocent. It is a reminder that violence against any human being is a transgression against God, a violation of the divine image that resides within each person. This perspective challenges us to reject all forms of violence, to embrace a culture of peace and non-violence. The concept of martyrdom in Islam is not about glorifying violence, but about bearing witness to the truth, even in the face of persecution. Abel's martyrdom is a reminder that true strength lies not in the ability to inflict harm, but in the willingness to suffer for the sake of justice and righteousness. The Islamic emphasis on the value of one innocent life is a powerful reminder of our interconnectedness, our shared humanity. It is a call to solidarity, a challenge to stand in defense of the vulnerable, to protect the innocent from harm. Buddhist lens. From a Buddhist perspective, Abel's non-attachment stands in stark contrast to Cain's grasping. Cain's envy is rooted in dukkha, suffering, the insatiable desire that leads to misery. Abel's willingness to surrender his offering, his detachment from material possessions, represents a path to liberation. This contrast highlights the destructive nature of craving and the transformative power of letting go. Cain's problem was his need to control and have more than his brother. Abel's peace was knowing he had enough. The Buddhist concept of dukkha, suffering, recognizes that life is inherently marked by impermanence and dissatisfaction. Cain's envy is a manifestation of this suffering, a result of his clinging to material possessions and his desire for control. Abel's detachment, on the other hand, represents a path to liberation, a way of transcending the cycle of craving and suffering. Abel's willingness to surrender his offering, his detachment from material possessions, represents a path to liberation. This is not about rejecting the material world altogether, but about cultivating a spirit of non-attachment, a freedom from the grip of desire. It is a recognition that true happiness lies not in what we possess, but in who we are. Cain's problem was his need to control and have more than his brother. Abel's peace was knowing he had enough. This distinction highlights the destructive nature of craving and the transformative power of letting go. Cain's grasping for recognition and favor, his need to possess more than his brother, ultimately led to his downfall. Abel, in contrast, found peace in contentment, in the recognition that true fulfillment comes from within, not from external validation. The Buddhist path emphasizes the importance of cultivating compassion and loving kindness towards all beings. Abel's silent witness, his enduring presence, serves as a reminder of the interconnectedness of all life. It is a call to extend compassion to the marginalized, to work towards a world where all beings are treated with dignity and respect. The lesson of Abel through this lens is that true spiritual growth is achieved through the release of the ego's grasp and the expansion of compassion. By understanding the roots of suffering as seen in Cain's actions, we can begin to cultivate the qualities of non-attachment and compassion that Abel embodies. This is a journey of self-discovery, a process of inner transformation that leads to greater peace and harmony both within ourselves and in the world around us. In this light, Abel becomes a teacher of the path to liberation, a guide on the journey towards enlightenment. In the final analysis, Abel's echo is a persistent call to conscience, a reminder that the past is not merely a collection of events, but a living force that shapes our present and our future. It is a call to remember the victims of injustice, to amplify the voices of the marginalized, to work towards a world where all are treated with dignity and respect. It is a call to tikkun, to repair the brokenness of the world, to restore justice and harmony. It is a challenge to confront the consequences of our actions, to choose compassion over indifference, to build a world where the cry of the innocent is no longer heard, because justice has finally prevailed. Abel's silence, his enduring presence, continues to speak to us across the ages, a powerful reminder that the struggle for justice is never over, that the work of healing is always ongoing. Through him, we are asked to examine our own hearts and to choose the path of light over the path of darkness. Redemption's horizon, breaking the cycle, the mirror of Cain. Redemption begins when we see Cain's face in our own mirror, when we acknowledge the capacity for envy and violence within ourselves. This is not a comfortable truth, but it is an essential one. To deny our capacity for darkness is to deny our need for grace. To close ourselves off from the possibility of transformation, the Christ who was Abel on the cross, the innocent victim, also becomes Cain in the desert, bearing our exile, our sins, our brokenness. He shatters the mark of division, offering a path to reconciliation. Here, solidarity replaces surveillance. We become our brother's keepers, not out of obligation, but out of love. The mirror of self-recognition is not a tool for self-recognition, but a pathway to self-awareness. It is an invitation to confront our own shadows, to acknowledge the ways in which we have contributed to the brokenness of the world. It is a call to humility, a recognition that we are all in need of grace. Christ's identification with both Abel and Cain is a profound expression of divine solidarity. He enters into our brokenness, bearing the weight of our sins, offering us a path to healing and reconciliation. He bridges the divide between victim and perpetrator, offering forgiveness to the guilty and comfort to the afflicted. Solidarity is not merely a feeling of empathy, it is a commitment to action. It is a willingness to stand alongside the marginalized, to share their burdens, to work towards their liberation. It is a recognition that our own well-being is inextricably linked to the well-being of others. To become our brother's keepers, not out of obligation but out of love, changes everything. It changes our perspective, our actions, and our world. Love is the most powerful force in the universe, and it is the only thing that can truly break the cycle of violence. The active pursuit of redemption. True redemption is not a passive state. It is an active engagement with the world, a commitment to healing the wounds of injustice. It requires us to challenge the systems that perpetuate inequality, to speak out against oppression, to extend compassion to the marginalized. It is a journey of transformation, a process of becoming more fully human. Redemption is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process, a continuous journey of growth and transformation. It requires us to be vigilant, to be mindful of our own biases and prejudices, to be open to learning and change. Challenging systems of inequality requires courage, persistence, and a willingness to disrupt the status quo. It requires us to speak truth to power, to advocate for policies that promote justice and equity, to support organizations that are working to create a more just and compassionate world. Extending compassion to the marginalized requires us to see them as human beings, not as statistics or stereotypes. It requires us to listen to their stories, to understand their struggles, to offer them our support and solidarity. It requires us to see the image of God in every person, regardless of their background or circumstances. To become more fully human is to become more like Christ. It is to love, to forgive, and to serve. It is to walk the path of humility and to embrace the way of the cross. The power of love and forgiveness. The cycle of violence can only be broken by acts of love and forgiveness. We must choose to forgive those who have wronged us, to extend mercy to those who have shown us none. This is not easy, but it is essential if we are to create a world where peace and justice prevail. Forgiveness is not about condoning wrongdoing, but about releasing ourselves from the burden of resentment and bitterness. It is about choosing to let go of the past, to break the chains that bind us to anger and hatred. It is a gift that we give to ourselves as well as to others. Extending mercy to those who have shown us none is a radical act of love, a testament to the transformative power of grace. It is a challenge to our natural inclination to retaliate, to seek revenge. It is a call to break the cycle of violence, to choose compassion over vengeance. Creating a world where peace and justice prevail requires a collective commitment to love and forgiveness. It requires us to build communities that are based on trust, respect, and mutual support. It requires us to cultivate a culture of peace, where violence is rejected and reconciliation is embraced. The power of love is stronger than the power of hate. The light of Christ is stronger than the darkness of sin. Call to action: economic mitzvot, Jubilee debt relief, UBI pilots, echoing Levitical gleaning. These are not merely economic policies, they are acts of justice, expressions of our commitment to creating a more equitable world. They are ways of putting our faith into action, of living out the values of compassion and solidarity. Jubilee debt relief is a way of releasing the oppressed from the burden of debt, giving them a fresh start and enabling them to rebuild their lives. It is a recognition that economic justice is essential for human flourishing. UBI pilots are a way of ensuring that everyone has access to the basic necessities of life, regardless of their employment status. It is a recognition that human dignity is not contingent on economic productivity. Levitical gleaning is a practice of leaving a portion of the harvest for the poor and the marginalized. It is a reminder that we are all stewards of God's creation and that we have a responsibility to share our resources with those in need. Economic justice is not a political issue, it is a moral imperative. Sacred disruption, Waycots modeled on civil rights foot-washing liturgies. These are forms of sacred disruption, ways of challenging the status quo, of bearing witness to injustice. They are acts of non-violent resistance, expressions of our commitment to creating a more just and peaceful world. Boycotts are a way of using economic power to challenge unjust systems, to hold corporations and governments accountable for their actions. They are a way of saying, we will not participate in your injustice. Foot-washing liturgies are a way of embodying humility and service, of recognizing the dignity of every person, regardless of their social status. They are a way of challenging the hierarchies that perpetuate inequality. Nonviolent resistance is a powerful tool for social change, a way of challenging injustice without resorting to violence. It is a way of demonstrating that love is stronger than hate, that justice is more powerful than oppression. Sacred disruption is a way of living out our faith in the public square. It is a way of being a light in a dark world. The offering reversed. The ground still speaks, but now its voice is a question. What if Cain's hands, our hands, planted instead of pillaged, nurtured instead of destroyed? This is the invitation to reverse the original offering, to transform the field of discord into a field of shared abundance. For in the end, the only offering that truly quiets the blood is the bread we break not on altars of division, but in the field of our shared humanity, the table of our common dignity. When we see the image of God in every person, when we extend compassion to the stranger, when we work to heal the wounds of injustice, then we begin to break the cycle of violence and build a world where peace and justice prevail. This is a call to radical hope, a hope rooted in the belief that transformation is possible, that even the most broken among us can find redemption. The field that once bore the stain of fratricide can now bear the fruit of reconciliation. The hands that once held a stone can now hold a loaf of bread. This is the promise of redemption, the possibility of new beginnings. The bread we share is a symbol of our shared humanity, a reminder that we are all brothers and sisters, children of the same Creator. Thank you for accompanying us on this profound exploration of Cain and Abel and the enduring consequences of envy. If this journey into the depths of human nature and divine grace has touched you, we invite you to join the Hope in God community. Subscribe for more in-depth theological reflections, share your own experiences of seeking harmony and justice, and let us continue together, finding hope in every step of our shared pilgrimage towards a deeper understanding of God's love and our calling to create a more just and compassionate world.